Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this week's Saddleback webinar. I'm Liz Mangus, Literacy Specialist with Saddleback Educational. As usual, we have started our broadcast just a few minutes early to allow you to get comfortable and locate your control bar. If you happen to be new here, you want to locate your control bar, which is at the bottom of your web browser window. And on that control bar, you have a couple of options for communicating with us and for communicating with your fellow attendees today. For the Q&A, that's the button you want to use if you want to ask questions of either Saddleback or our presenter today, Sharon Plant. You also have the option of accessing the chat area, which is where you can communicate with your fellow attendees. Now, keep in mind, if you want everybody who's on the webinar today to read what you have to say in the chat, there's a little drop-down menu there, and you need to select all panelists and attendees. Otherwise, only I and a few other people will get your message. So keep that in mind when you are using the chat. Also, the chat area is where you will be receiving links to our resources for today. And yes, you will be receiving a certificate of attendance. And yes, there will be a recording available of this session, available 24 hours after our broadcast concludes today. In addition, we'll get started right at 3 o'clock Eastern Time. We always want to give you Twitter information because we want you to follow us, and we want you to take this time right now to go ahead and let everybody know you're joining us today. You have the Saddleback Twitter information here, as well as Sharon's Twitter information. So go ahead, shout us out, let everybody know you are here, and we'll get started right at 3 o'clock Eastern Time. In the meantime, if you can go to the chat area, let us know where you are joining us from, and let's say hi to Sharon. How are you today, Sharon? Hello, Sharon. I don't think she can hear me, but in the meantime, let's go to the chat and see where, okay, we got Raleigh, we've got New York City, we've got Minneapolis, Mission, Texas, hello, Mission, Indiana, we've got Edmonton, hello, New Hampshire, Austin, Texas. Thank you everybody for joining us. Let's check in with Sharon and see if she can hear us yet. Sharon, can you hear us?
Yep, I lost something in there a minute ago, but yep,
yeah.
I'm back.
Okay, she's back. All right, how are you?
I don't know. I'm good. I'm excited to see all these people, where they're all from. I just said to someone, it's funny, somebody's from Meredith, New Hampshire, and I camp there usually this time of year. Not this year, but kind of exciting. I don't know, something went wonky.
Well, we're glad you're back.
I'm glad I'm back too. It'd be kind of hard not to be here.
We've got a few people joining us from Canada, as usual, New York City. Hi, Dolores. Thank you for joining us. And also, while you're waiting, if you can let us know, this will be good information for us to have. What do you teach? Do you teach special education? Are you working with students with dyslexia? Are you ESL? Are you just a general ed reading teacher? Let us know because that's going to, okay, Wilson and special ed, great, ESL, dyslexia therapy. Okay, secondary science, we've got, title, okay, we've got a great variety here.
Right, a variety.
Okay, good. This is good information, so keep it coming. We have so much information for you today, so we want to know how to direct your attention as we go. Teacher, kindergarten for the first time, welcome. Welcome to our webinar series. Reading intervention, perfect, okay. Second grade, a lot of good stuff for elementary here as well today. So thank you. Okay, okay, we have some parents joining us today too, looking for resources. So you'll definitely
when parents pop in.
Yes.
Librarians are so important to this process. It's amazing.
Oh yeah, 100%. Hybrid ELL, virtual, hybrid, virtual. Yes. We've got some OG tutors on the line. Great.
Yay.
Okay. All right, we'll get started in about 1 more minute. Sharon is joining us from Connecticut, and you're still on summer vacation. Is that right?
Sort of.
Okay.
Sort of. There's a lot of work going back to school. We are actually going back live in person with a lot of modifications to our building and technology going in. New teachers have to report tomorrow, all staff Monday, kids supposedly next Thursday, as long as all goes well.
Okay, yeah, that's it's going to be an interesting year for everybody. That's for sure. So
Yeah.
you're doing a lot of like, I'm sure, rearranging and spacing of kids and different layouts and things. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, we're going with the pod model. Luckily we're small
Okay.
anyway, but still a lot to be done. They've totally reconfigured parts of the building to make it work, which is interesting.
And are you doing that thing too where kids can't share supplies? Everybody's going to have
Oh
their
yeah,
own little,
they have
yeah.
to have their own supplies. They each have to have their own device. It's yeah, their two teachers work with two pods to kind of cover the different content areas. It's going to be very interesting. We have, luckily, I have a very forward-thinking head of school who really saw the writing on the wall back in March when we went remote and started kind of laying the groundwork then.
Okay. Well, best of luck. I'm going to keep in touch with you and hear because I want to hear how it's going. So
Yeah.
it is 3 o'clock Eastern time. That means it's time to officially launch. So today we're talking about educational technology and integrating reading supports with all these different ed tech tools. And the lens that Sharon is bringing today is definitely dyslexia, special education. However, if you are an ESL teacher, it looks like we have a lot of ESL teachers on the line, a lot of reading interventionists, a lot of general ed like elementary teachers. There is definitely something here for you as well. So before I formally introduce Sharon, I just want to kind of give you an overview of what we're going to be talking about today. She's going to talk about a lot of different tools that fit into these categories that you see here on your screen. So I just want to say that if you are a teacher of ESL, or if you're more in that general ed world, my opinion is that you're going to find lots of cool things that you are going to like, but especially once we get down into that encoding, fluency, basically the second half of this list, I think you're going to find a lot of stuff that you really like. So just be aware that we have something for everybody. So please stay tuned and you will definitely find something that you like. So let me formally introduce Sharon to you. So Sharon is an educator with over 23 years of teaching experience in special education and currently serves as a teacher and chief technology integrator at the Southport School. As a classroom educator and certified Orton Gillingham tutor, she uses her training and understanding of technology to empower students with learning disabilities in the classroom and with virtual learning. Sharon has taken the work done at the Southport School and conducts presentations and workshops across the country and online, providing other educators training that incorporates best practices in professional development. She has delivered workshops for Kent Independent School District in Michigan, the Pennsylvania Department of Education, and the Assistive Technology International Association. Additionally, she has led virtual training for Learning Ally and Spotlight on Dyslexia and the Center for Technology and Disabilities, while also presenting at the International Dyslexia Association and the Dyslexia Foundation. Sharon is the co-author of Utilizing Technology to Engage Students with Learning Disabilities. Additionally, Sharon was awarded the 2016 Distinguished Alumni Award from George Mason University College of Education and Human Development. And we're so excited that you are here today. Ladies and gentlemen, I just want you to know she's going to be sharing so much. We are dropping links. We're going to drop that link in the chat over and over again. We put together a document compiling all this information as well as a link to her slides. So if she says something and you feel like you missed it, don't worry, it's there in those documents for you. All right, Sharon, thank you so much. I'm going to turn it over to you.
All right. Hi, everyone. Excited that you're here. It's going to be, I apologize now, it's going to be fast and furious. It's always a hard catch-22 of not sharing enough of the tools, and there's so many tools over the time period that I think are important as part of this that I always try to share. It's really just kind of a dip your toe into the water of understanding some of the possibilities that are out there across many platforms. I often go to YouTube to learn more, and I'll share a resource at the end. I also, for all the images, this is a very image heavy slide while I talk about it, all the images have links on them to those tools or to videos that I think are important. So when you access the slides, again, this tiny URL will give you access to these slides. You can click on those links and take to those tools. Great. So I teach at the Southport School, which is here in Connecticut. It is a small independent school for students with language-based learning disabilities. So my students have dyslexia, ADHD, executive function challenges. We are transitional, so very skill-based. Been there for about 16 years now. If you ever have questions afterwards or need more resources, feel free to email me. As Liz shared, Twitter, great place to be. I love connecting with educators on Twitter. You can access my blog as well, which I finally got myself back going on through all of this. I also, as part of our school, we developed a training branch called the Southport CoLab. So you can sit there for workshops we are doing, or if you ever are looking for more training, you can reach out to through that website, or you can always email me and I can put you in connection with our director who helps plan out more individualized workshops if that's something you're looking for. But we also offer more workshops coming online, particularly through now. We also have some on a YouTube channel I'll share later. So, gonna get right into it. So first thing when we're working with these kids with learning disabilities is making sure they have accessible print. And this can happen in many different formats, but there's some key places to think about that. The first one is Learning Ally. Learning Ally is an amazing resource for many things. They have a huge bank of accessible books for kids and adults. It is a human reading the voice. A lot of their text has print along with it, but not all of it. And that's kind of a key component when kids are learning to read. If they're listening, we really want them to see the text at the same time, but Learning Ally has been doing more of that. It's great. They use their own tools. So they have a desktop client, an app. So you really just work within their format, really easy to set up. It is subscription based. Families can subscribe on their own, schools can subscribe. And actually, I know right now, I think I saw it on Facebook yesterday, they are running a, I think it's about $99 when it's usually about $125. So something you're interested in. If you can't find that discount, you can always, again, email me and I will send you their way with what that discount code they were running is, or you can find them on Facebook. A counterpart not as many people may be as familiar with is Bookshare. Bookshare is a digitized voice of literature. They always have auditory and visual text together. If you're on a Chromebook or a laptop, it works in the browser. If you're on a tablet or phone, they need third-party apps. We are mainly an iPad-based school, so this is where we function with Bookshare. Two of my favorites, Voice Dream Reader. There's a cost to it, but it's really robust with some of the better digitized voices that are in there, lots of customization. But if you want to kind of start simpler, Dolphin Easy Reader, also really great. It's free, so sometimes that's an easier place to start. One of the great things about Bookshare, it is free for qualified users. So that's one of the reasons I often recommend it, because if you really can't get into Learning Ally for the cost, Bookshare is free. If you're a school, I worked with them that I can qualify any student in my school, and I can give them an individualized account as well. Really great resource to look into. One of the key things in talking about human and digitized voice is sometimes we assume we know which one we better. A lot of people always assume it's the human voice, and I totally understand why. I love Audible, but there's sometimes that it actually may not be. And there is actually a tool out there that can help with this. It is called the Protocol for Accommodations in Reading. It actually started as a paper-based tool. You can still find the paper-based tool through the link on here. It's on Don Johnston's website, a great company who does many accessibility tools. But these two women created this paper version, which is free to download and to use. But Don Johnston took it a next step further, made it digitized, where the essence is a student reads a passage on their own. You can decide what grade level, and then they answer multiple choice questions. And then they're presented either in the online tool where it's done right within the system, or if you're doing one-on-one, you need to figure out a text reader and a human voice book. And you see how this comes out. This assessment was a 7th grader that I worked with. And you can see his comprehension on his own was not very strong. And when I gave him the opportunity to listen to it, you can see, human voice was really his high point where he could comprehend, showed his comprehension shining through, which we know happens with so many dyslexic kids. Even the text reader gave him some benefits. So if he just needed the free version for a while of Bookshare versus getting him Learning Ally, we were still going to provide him a benefit. I have had students who come up really high in the text reader as well. Some students who have trouble with decoding and comprehension, this tool is not going to really give you that much. These are really for those kids we know who are higher, have higher comprehension levels, and it's not showing. And this was really empowering for this middle school student I worked with, because when they saw that, they're like, wow, I really can understand. I just need to listen. And then they were really eager to start listening to their books. So again, the link down there for the paper version, or you can explore Don Johnson's website to learn more about the computerized version. So for paper access, we still sort of live in a paper world. I'm not sure how that's going to go now with everything. But if we need to provide paper to students and we need it accessible, there's a variety of tools out there. VoiceStream actually came out, the developer who made VoiceStream Reader came out with a scanner. I love it because it works well on its own, and it also integrates with VoiceStream Reader. So if you can have multiple pages scanned in the scanner, and we'll import it into VoiceStream Reader and always live there, and really can use those customized tools. There is, again, a cost to that. Claro Scan Pen is another one I've used for a long time. It's only a couple bucks, so sometimes it can be a little cheaper. Seeing AI is kind of a funny one because it's from Microsoft, but it's for iOS only. It's really designed for the blind, so there's actually a lot more things in it besides just a scan text and read it. So if you have a student who might get lost with other bells and whistles, it's probably the one to avoid, although it's free. But if you have someone who could really avoid those and really looking for a free option on an iOS device, great tool. Speechify, I love. There's so much that this can do. And the developer of this was a young man who was at Brown, highly dyslexic, and was really frustrated with being able to deal with the text. So he developed his own app and then now has created it. There's desktop software, there's iOS software where, again, you can scan multiple things, and it really turns it into what I equate like an Audible book. You can have the visual text along with it, but his essence was he would scan all his things, he would put it on his phone, he would put his earphones in and like go, walk across campus. So really another great tool, and I can put you in contact with him if that's something you'd like to learn more about. Snapverter is from Text Help. It's really cool because it really works well with Google Drive. So particularly if you have those PDFs or you can scan a PDF, they have this file system that's really quite remarkable. Installs in Drive. They have a folder that you can just drop a PDF that's not accessible in, and the magic of Snapverter converts it and puts it in a completed folder. I found this really helpful with a particular student who was working on a laptop, so didn't have all these other tools accessible to him. And I put Snapverter in his Google Drive, and I shared his Snapverter folders to me. So on my end, I could just drop it in and it would automatically go to him. Now that only works if you're working with just a couple of kids. If you have a lot, that's a challenge, but it is a really cool option. And Text Help has an amazing YouTube channel, so you can definitely go there to learn more. If you really need a physical reader, these have been around for a while. This is the first one I love, the C Pen. It really works very well. It is very simple to move across the text. It is pretty clear. You can use headphones. I love what this company has been doing. They have a version that doesn't have a dictionary, so it can be used for test taking purposes. They are working with some of the testing companies to make this an approved device. I know they've been doing that, which is great. Hard part is it's about $250 a pen, at least individually, but it does work really well if you need something that is not, on a device. Also think about the devices you're using, because there's a lot of technology built into them or it can be layered in. Again, one of the reasons we use iPads is I love what's built into iOS devices. Siri is that thing for students to be able to dictate pretty easily. They just need some instruction on how to dictate. Where is the microphone? Speaking clearly. iPads, kids often speak to the bottom because they think phone. They need to learn the microphone is up by the camera, so they need to talk to the top, and they don't need to yell and things like that. But they also have this great speech selection and speak screen built into the iOS device. I know it's actually, I think, even getting more robust with the next iOS update. I love that it'll highlight content. It's pretty easy. Once my students, even my first graders, learn how to use it, it's just priceless. So I really love that about the iOS devices. That being said, if you're in the Chrome environment, this is a really amazing tool, also from Text Help, Read and Write for Google. Read and Write Gold was like a gold standard when I started getting into assistive technology. I love this because it is much more seamless. It works, you know, in the browsers. There's a lot of tools that come along with it. There is a subscription fee for it. However, if you're an educator with an educator email, you can have access to it for free. So if you want to try it out and explore what it is, you know, definitely look into it. Again, you can see here, there's a lot built into this tool. So it's great for the cost, particularly if you're living in that Chrome environment. And again, Text Help, great YouTube channel. Don Johnston, as I mentioned before, their version is Snap and Read Universal. It's got some cool study tools built into it that are really neat for note-taking and moving information over that is a little different than Read and Write. So I really love it. Again, great read alouds, and it will work in various places. So again, it's another great robust tool that if it has more of those features, I can't recommend it also enough from Don Johnston. If you're in the Microsoft environment, so Office 365, Microsoft has really gone amazing in the last few years about what they're working with for students. Their immersive reader is a really great tool that they are constantly building into more and more tools. I know they're now working with Flipgrid and Buncee. It's just really remarkable. We don't tend to use Microsoft because I find it a little harder for elementary school students with all the layout, but I love Microsoft for like high school on up, maybe middle school as well. We live in the Google Drive environment, but this is Microsoft's learning tools availability. So again, they have read aloud, they have spacing and font styles, and they can do parts of speech and syllabicate words. It's really remarkable. I often think about, particularly high school kids, this works great with OneNote if they need it for note taking. I can put you in touch with Microsoft Mike. I'm not kidding, his name is Mike. If you're on Twitter and not connected to him, if you're living in the Microsoft environment, he's really great about getting information to you and providing training. So let's get into kind of some of the reading tools that would go along with this. I'm going to give some specifics on tools and then kind of some global tools. By the way, keep in mind, really any of this that I'm going to talk about could be used virtually or in person. And I think that's really key because a lot of what my staff has used that we've kind of evolved this over, when we went remote, it was amazing. And actually some of it was actually made it so much easier for us to go remote because they had it under their belts. So there's a couple of specific apps. Sound Literacy is one of my favorite apps. It is an iOS app. It was developed by a speech language pathologist. For all you Wilson people out there, when I was Wilson trained 20-something years ago, one of my favorite things was that magnetic notebook with the moving letter tiles. Of course, what always challenges when you lost a tile or you needed more than one letter, you kind of had to pick and choose. I bought more and then they all got mixed up. This to me is that. It's pretty neat. The letters will replicate themselves. Again, if you're doing your OG person, again, they use the color coding for the vowels versus the consonants. And it really can be used across a great range. It goes up into those complex prefixes and suffixes. This would be on a teacher device though. You're not going to get this app for your students. It would be on a teacher device. You could project it. You could put it through Zoom, Google Meet, whatever you're using. You can have more than one board if you're going to work with maybe individual students. So if you go to the waffle, if you're in the app, you can see that you can set up tiles for more than one student. So it's easy to use if you're working maybe individually or small group instruction and you need it set up in different ways. She has a great Facebook group for this. So if you're on Facebook, want to know more about it, I definitely encourage you to dive into there. Just some quick shots that I took from her recently. I mean, again, you can really see, you can kind of design these to build in some different layers of levels. It's not just the basics. There's just a lot that can be done with it that is just so amazing in this simple tool. I really don't do enough with it myself, but I should. This is also an iOS tool. This is a fun one because it makes me think of sound literacy, but this would be on a child's device. It's really cutesy, so probably more elementary, but it does have the movable letters. And what I love, the sound literacy, there's no sound to the letters. It's really an instruction tool with the teacher and the students. This could be on a student's device and maybe they're doing practice. When they move the letters, it makes the sound. And for those purists like myself, it does make pretty authentic sounds where you would be concerned that they may not. It's really good. And you can build in quizzes, but it's really a lot of fun and cute. So as the students move letters, so if it was bag, it would be b, a, g, and then it would say the whole word. So you could give them a list of words that they could practice with on their own, and they would get the sound reinforcement as they're doing it. Really fun to play with. One of my tools that you're probably going to hear me talk ad nauseum about, I love Class Kick. This was probably a game changer for me a while ago, and really got my staff through when we were teaching remotely, because there's so much you can do with it. Class Kick is a blank whiteboard style tool. You can have about 20 lessons for free, and then there is a subscription cost. It's one of the ones actually we chose to pay for because we use it so much. I love this. I pulled this actually out of their teacher resources. So you can actually make these letters manipulative. So again, the students can drag them up to where they need to be. What I love about Class Kick too is there's a lot of tools. There's a pen, there's a highlighter, there's a text box, there's an audio recording. So maybe the teacher is recording directions and the student can listen to it. When the teacher makes it and makes the slides all at once, it is simply shared to students with a code. They don't need a login. If you go subscription, you can use Google Login. And then the teacher can see all the students' slides at once. It automatically gives each child their own copy, kind of like if you're a Google Classroom person, make a copy for each student. This does it automatically. And you can actually interact on each student's slides just from your teacher dashboard, which is also really great. You can give feedback, you can do stickers, and I'll talk about it more through all of this, about some of the things you can do. But I love this manipulative component where you can create these letters and make them draggable. If you're not familiar with Lexia, I love Lexia. We have used Lexia for a long time. We actually had like the disk-based server thing. Oh gosh, it was crazy. They've really done so much robust backend to really improve it when they went to Core 5. And last year when they took their middle school version up to be Power Up versus Strategies. This is great for reinforcement. This is not a teaching tool, but is great for reinforcement. It really aligns to a structured literacy instruction pattern. And you can, as the teacher, you can go in and really customize it. So you can either use their assessment and have it place a student, or if I'm working on a specific skill, I can go in and adjust my student settings and say, here's your homework, here's your practice. It's gamey, it's kind of fun. So if you need something besides a worksheet, it's definitely worth looking into, but there is, of course, a cost to it. With decoding, and some of the photological awareness, you'll see, again, many places I'll talk about slides, PowerPoint, Class Kick. I try not to talk about each example all the time, but I will get into them as you can see. So this is kind of a mishmash. My OG fellow, I love her. When she came to our school, she came from what would be the pure one-to-one environment. We're a small group, and that was new to her. So she had to figure out how to easily differentiate words for students while working in a small group environment. She had this great idea that she would color code a table. So a table that could be made in slides or a Google Doc, wherever it may be. And she would then create these, and she printed out on paper initially until we got more into technology. So each student knew their color. And so she could say, okay, you're gonna read yellow, you're gonna read green, you're gonna read blue. And that stood consistent throughout the entire year. So when she presented it to them, later we projected it, the students knew which color to focus on. One, that was great because one, it picked the order right away. You could adjust the order of the color. So it wasn't like, oh, I get to read first, those are my words. They knew which their words were. You could also differentiate in the presentation. So maybe the person in blue needed more complex vocabulary for that pattern, while the person in yellow needed some more, maybe more familiar words. This we were working on the sounds of ED. And truly the students, we did this with middle school students, they didn't really pick up on that differentiation, and despite we had done it for actually a couple of years. So quick, easy way to differentiate is just color coding in a table. And then you copy that document and you can keep replicating it. We did it with sentences and paragraphs as well. This I had created in Google Slides, these tables, where I initially had projected it or just shared it to students and they could read it off their devices. Either one works. Again, if you were presenting virtually, you could project it into a Zoom or Google Meet. And this was a really great thing, but I wanted to layer in some other tools with this. So the 1 through 6 are just all the Google Slides, which have all the tables and sentences and paragraphs. I took it into then this tool Nearpod. Nearpod, again, has a free level where you can access some of their free resources or build your own. They also have a paid level. I love this too because the teacher controls the slides. The students here had access to the 1 through 6, but I have other activities built in and they can't change it. It's under my control. And in the bottom side corner of the teacher's device, you see how many students are in there. And if a student leaves it, it turns red. This was so great for me teaching virtually because I could see it go red and I'd be like, okay, Johnny, get back into Nearpod. So pretty cool. But what I also love is we are working on these 3 sounds of ED, and with the Nearpod format, I could then also add in activities. So I could do this multiple, choice activity. They have some new fun activities. So it was great that I could get the reading done aloud. I could say, okay, yellow read, blue read, green read, and then they could go ahead and do some other activities. And I wasn't changing to different tools. It was all built right in. Another great tool, this is actually on my bucket list for this year. I've been playing with it because my Orton Gillingham fellow really hung her hat on this for the last year, is Pear Deck, which works directly with Google Slides to do this. It's an add-on in Google Slides. There is, again, a free and a paid level. Start with free. She did for a good year until we took her up to paid to get some more of the back-end information we need. But it's really cool. And they also have a great YouTube channel to learn more about it. But she did this last year inadvertently because a student was homesick, happened to FaceTime in, but through the use of this Pear Deck, she can share the code and it works directly with her Google Slides. She could build in interactive activities that the students engage with and they, again, read aloud or provide written answers, typed answers within the Google Slides as she designed a lesson. I really hope to do actually more PD on this coming this fall as I'm deep into it myself. Again, this kind of gives you a little bit about Pear Deck. They have some drawing slides. You can have the idea of them answering questions so that if you have the teacher back end, you can really get all that feedback live. You do need 2 devices to do that. So you need one that would be presenting, and if you have the teacher back end, you need another device to be looking at that live. So she would present on her laptop and look at this on her iPad. That is one thing to keep in mind. So the idea of encoding in morphology with all of this, I'm going to revisit ClassKick. Kahoot and quizzes, I mentioned before, you put on the earlier slides, there's a lot you can do with that. And when I get to those slides, I'll talk about that. This other tools are, I'll get a little bit more specific as I get to them, but WordWiz is the one I mentioned before, great fun for spelling. Simplex spelling apps I'll mention. Spelling City is a website, so device agnostic, that you can import your own list and they have activities ready to pick from. So again, this is ClassKick again. You can see more of that toolbar here. What I love for this for spelling activities is for those kids who, one, you're just working on visual recognition. So in the top left, I said the word, they just had to circle it. But the bottom one has been a game changer for me with some middle schoolers, because if you think about one, or actually even elementary school, really doesn't matter. One, do you have differentiated spelling lists? If you did, you could create multiple ClassKicks and just share the code. You don't need to run them live. They can just be going and you could go back in later and look at what the student had done. The other amazing thing is you have those speedy demons and you have those slow processors. So the speedy demons get impatient when somebody needs a word repeated, and those slow processors need that time to process. With the bottom one, I recorded the word and then they're on their own working with headphones. So the speedy demon could go at the pace that was working for them. The slow processor, who needed it repeated 5 times, had that control in their hands. They could listen to it as many times as they wanted. Additionally, you could build in a bank of, say, 20 words. That would seem like a crazy amount, but fine, 20 words. Student A gets through 20. Student B maybe gets through 15. And student C maybe only gets through 10. And you could say, okay, we're done. Nobody knows where anybody else is at. So you can make that quick adjustment for who's going to complete how much, and they're all just working at their pace. And when they're done, nobody sees what anyone else has done, and that's great. Again, you can also, if it is live, go right on and give direct feedback right on there. But again, you have a pen, you have the text box, you have drawing tools, recording, you can put in links, photos. You can, as a teacher, create multiple choice questions or fill in the blank questions. This is kind of the teacher end, just a quick view so that I could see all my students' work on the left. I could go directly on that student slide and give feedback, either drawing or you can build in stickers. Really great to be able to see just in one spot all the students' work. I love quizzes and Kahoot for many things. Most people are more familiar with Kahoot. I'm a big quizzes fan, although Kahoot's put in some other things recently. They're both game-based tools. So what fun to review. Maybe you're reviewing morphology rules. Maybe you're reviewing just visual spelling rules. You know, anything that can be done. It is so cool. What I love about quizzes over Kahoot is at all times, quizzes does not need to be projected. It, again, just with the code like Kahoot does. However, the questions and answers are live on the student's device. So one, I have those kids who struggled with the Kahoot because they couldn't look up at the board, remember what they needed to remember, and then pick the right color or shape on their device. Also, those students who couldn't read what was on the slides, and then you have to read it out loud to them. Quizzes has built in the ability to listen to the text. It's actually under the student's control. It used to be under the teacher's control. You can make it a possibility. But again, I love that the questions and answers are just on the student's device, so they don't have to be looking around. Also, if you don't have the ability to project, or again, if you're in remote learning, you know, they can just be focused on the quiz on their device, you know, have their Meet or their Zoom running in the background, and you can kind of on your teacher end see what's happening. You can also shuffle the questions, you can shuffle the answers, which I loved in live person quizzes because nobody could look over and say, oh, you clicked the red one. No, they probably were on a different question with answers in different orders. Both great fun tools that you can do so much with. I find if I put anything in either one of these, my kids will complete any task. And quizzes has fun memes. So again, this is what quizzes looks like. Again, it will be able to read aloud. They can pause it, they can do a bunch of things. And again, this would be on the student's device. Doesn't matter what device, they would be able to use all these functionalities. Again, these memes, highly hysterical. They really enjoy the students. Again, they can also adjust whether they want the music or sound effects themselves. You can do some on the teacher end. If you live in an iOS environment, these simplex spelling apps are nice because they do follow a particular structured literacy pattern. And again, you can have more than one student in the app. So again, this would be on a teacher's device, although we can't really classroom share anymore, but when we can, again, this may be good. You do have to buy a lot of apps to get, you know, they definitely sequence them out. So there is a cost to these apps and you have to buy a bunch if you're going to go further. I just like to share them out because I think there's something to them that is beneficial. If you're teaching fluency, this is such a fascinating area for me. Again, I'm going to mention ClassKick. If you are familiar with Flipgrid, Flipgrid is a video-based tool. Fluency Tutor is also from TextHelp. Great, robust system. And then just thinking about where there's recording opportunity, I'll mention Pages, which is Apple's tool, but you could probably translate it. So here are the Apple, these would be the iOS, but I know, I think they've added it into the desktop. You could record audio. So I had some students who maybe needed some longer passages, and before you could have recorded audio in something like Google Slides, you know, this was the first place I could put a longer passage in here and have that student record themselves reading it right in there and then share the file to me. Slides I know now has the recorded audio, pretty sure I'm saying that right. And yes, and then if you're on an iOS device, they could access that through the browser. So they would go to slides.google.com in Safari. They could do that there if you wanted to live in the Google environment. Fluency Tutor is a really formalized program, again, from TextHelp. They were actually free. I don't know if they still are, I should check, but they were free through the spring and maybe they will continue through the fall, where again, this works in the Chrome environment and the teacher could assign passages and the students have recordings and it all kind of works through their back end system, a much more formalized fluency kind of program. Again, this is where I would leverage ClassKick because you could put a passage in, each student could go on and record themselves at the same time, and you can retain that data for later. So here I take, again, that same table concept, and I put those tables, again, I made this in slides and imported it into ClassKick using the recording feature that students could read their own list. If you had those super overachievers, they could read more than one list. And again, I built this in there and they could all complete it at the same time. And it was really beneficial that I could go back and re-listen to this on my own, because it just saves all the recordings in there, rather than having to, doing the running records like we used to do. This is one I had a great lower school colleague created for younger students, so some of the different passages. And what I loved is she was able to kind of build in that fluency practice where they had to record, and then she built in some of those other components that she could read it, could trace it, and they could write it. She recorded herself. These are her recordings of telling the students what to do. She really built a lot of activities into this one class kick that kind of hit on a bunch of different parts of a lesson, but that the students could independently progress as on their own and work at the same time. This is one actually that I found on Class Kick's resource site, which I loved. It was again, you could put a passage in, they have to read it, maybe they record it, and then you build in these other activities below it that they could write the main idea, explain themselves, they could write, they can type, and they could record their answers. But again, if it were fluency, you could have them record themselves reading the passage as well. And as a teacher, you can record directions for those kids who need that auditory component of directions. If you need this is a big one for a lot of areas, differentiated contextual text. Newsela or Newsela, which I know a lot of people are familiar with, and your pronunciation choice. If you're not familiar with Freckle, I'll explain that in a second. Another one, Great Tween Tribune, which is from the Smithsonian, and Rewordify. So Newsela and Freckle are very similar. We actually use Freckle for math, which is how we ended up with their language arts side. What they both do is that if you're not familiar with either one, you pick a passage that you want students to work on, and it may be leveled great for someone who is in grade 6, but maybe a 6th grader who needs a more simpler passage for vocabulary and sentence structure. Within both Freckle and Newsela, it's great. A simple click of a button, and it will automatically differentiate the article for you, and you can assign it to the students as is or print them out. There's also 4 multiple choice questions that go along with it. Really great. I know I loved Freckle at first over Newsela, because in Freckle, the teacher could control the level that it was assigned at, where Newsela, when it started, that the students could click on those buttons. I know they have since changed that, so the teacher can have that control in Newsela. Really love them both. Both, again, have a free level and a paid level, but if you're really looking for nonfiction articles that you need differentiated pretty quickly and easily, these are great places to go. I'm not going to play this video, but I leave it here for you to take a look at later. Rewordify is this website that's been around for a really long time. It always amazes me because it's always been free. And you can copy and paste text from anywhere and put it in the box, and they have this way to adjust the wording and vocabulary. It's not necessarily going to compile with like a Lexile level as specifically as Newsela or Freckle would, but it's a really neat tool that is pretty adjustable. They also have a lot of literature already in here that has been rewordified. It's pretty amazing. I always am amazed when I come back to this tool because, again, it's been free. It's always been free, seems to remain free. Definitely worth checking out. Oh, and I guess I forgot to put in, before I go back to Tween Tribune is also one that functions like Newsela and Freckle that I, again, just came across recently from the Smithsonian, also great nonfiction articles. So you can go check them out. All right. So tools to support comprehension. There's a few of them out there. Some probably may be more familiar. ReadWorks has been a great site for a long time. I love when they went digital. They have great paired text, a lot of great resources out there, definitely worth looking at. Lit charts, I just love that they've created this as digital. I think of 8th grade and the book All Quiet on the Western Front, which, again, I remember this still and how much I dreaded that book. And I got through it through those little black and yellow books, Cliff Notes, which became Spark Notes, which is now Lit Charts, a website. There is a cost to it, but if you really have a student who's struggling and needs that simplified, what those great resources did for many of us, that's available. So Common Lit, Actively Learn, and Insert Learning have some similarities. So Common Lit is a site that has articles already up there where, again, they're all free, and there's questions already assigned to them and embedded in there. So really cool resource. And I'll explain why in a second that's important. Actively Learn does something similar. It has a lot of nonfiction articles and text. If you're in the free version, you have access to some of the nonfiction. You can upload your own nonfiction, 3 free for each month. So you could do 3 one month, 3 the next month, they all live there. If you want to use their books, so a literature class, there's a cost each month. So the first time I used it, I used their free version. It was like $5 per book per month for like 3 months to rent the book. Unless if you subscribe, you get everything. And I'm going to kind of get into that a little bit. And then there's insert learning, which I will also explain a little bit more about. So this is Actively Learn. My kids with working memory struggle in literature to read an entire chapter and then answer those list of questions that I give them at the end. It just is not functional for them. They cannot retain the information. Actively Learn, if you're doing a PDF, it's at the end of each page, but if you're renting these books, you can embed the questions anywhere in the text. So I could go a couple paragraphs down and insert a question. I can mark a note. So, hey, we're going to discuss this in class tomorrow. I was just working on my current book. I'm marking which of the vocabulary words so that they pay attention where the vocabulary word pops in. And then as students answer, they can be short answer or multiple choice. I see them all here on the back end. I have a rating system. I design a rubric so they know what their requirements are to be. They can ask to revise it to do better. You can give written feedback that only goes to them. So this has been a game changer for me teaching with students in person and then remarkably really in remote learning because I didn't need them to have physical books. But again, I like that they can embed the questions and not have to retain all that information for so long. They can listen to it if they choose and also add notes and things like that for themselves. It's really a tool that we have invested in for our school that has been so beneficial and even more so during this time of having to be virtual. Insert Learning, really cool tool, I love. It works only in the Chrome environment though, so students have to be on Chromebooks or laptops using Chrome. But they actually really cool because you can embed questions anywhere on any web page. So if you find a great article or something like that, you can embed the questions there. Really so cool. You can go find more of their information on YouTube as well or reach out to them. ReadWorks, one thing that I always highlight about them because I had a teacher who always raves about this tool, is their article a day because it's a quick introduction. You could do at the beginning of class, maybe you have 10 minutes left at the end of class. That really works on a couple of skills all at once. I'm really excited because I'm back to teaching reading this year and it's going to be one of my first things I'm going to be doing. If you work with lower school students, younger elementary students, Epic Books is so cool. They have a great digital library of fiction and nonfiction. For educators, it's free. And you can have students access it for free, but they only have free access during school hours. And I think they qualify it as 8 to 4. So you can't assign a book for a student and have them access it as homework. Families can choose to subscribe on their own later hours, but really great for our lower school was using it for literature and distance learning, great access to these books. Some of them are accessible. My lower school teachers can't talk enough about this tool. So if you're working with elementary, great one. Another one I found that was Rivet Books, kind of very similar. We haven't delved as far into it with our teachers, but they also have a lot of accessible books that you can dive into as well. So I'm going to get into kind of different ways to demonstrate knowledge that can be kind of important. This can be so important when we're thinking about working with these LD kids, but this is where I'm also thinking about if you're still on here and you're an ESL teacher, or ELL, this is where some of that is going to be a really key component. So one of the tools I've loved for a while was this Reading Comprehension Booster app. It is an iOS tool, but it was really for younger students. I'm going to give you an image of it in a second. But it allowed a companion guide to work with a literature book for students to really fill in key information. I figured out, you know what, I can really create this for my middle school students, and you could do it on up in a ClassKick, Keynote, or Google Slides. So this is Reading Comprehension Booster. It's really so cute for a lower school, elementary. This could be on a teacher device, which is how most of my teachers used it, and they would project it, or again, you could share virtually and the class would collaborate to fill in all the information. So much fun. I decided I could take and design something a little bit more mature for my students, and really get into what I wanted in something like a Google Slides or in Keynote, or if you're in Microsoft and PowerPoint. I found a plot chart, I put in vocabulary terms, and I designed kind of the back end and then shared it to my students, and then they had to fill in different activities that I built in. So it really created kind of an interactive study guide that was digital, which was handy, and also really I could build all at once. Now I might do more in Google Slides and do parts of it and then add on slides as we go. In Class Kick, because I just like, wow, as I said, I love Class Kick. I also was building one around another book, because again, it's easy to share and copy. And if I add on information, if you add on slides in Class Kick later, it will automatically add them to the students. There's any extra part that you need to do. If they're signing in with a code on Class Kick and you're doing that, they just have to always sign in with their name the same way. So we set a standard to say, first initial, last name. As long as they do that, they will go back to their work. If they do a different name, it just creates a whole new one. And so they might panic and see that it's blank. For younger students, I had, again, my same wonderful lower school teacher work with some students that she took Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs. She scanned all the pages. She recorded herself reading the pages so that they could go in and listen on their own. She recorded herself reading these questions, and then the students could again use the audio feature or typing or writing to answer the questions. And they could move at their own pace. She built in some vocabulary activities at the beginning. And again, because she scanned the pages, but it just lived within the classroom, it's not really the copyright issues that might be out there. She's not sharing this out anywhere, but just in the classroom. But it was really, she loved, it was a lot of work, she said at the beginning, but when the students got into it and could really progress at their own and had some of that independence with completing it, they really had a lot of fun. Again, I mentioned Flipgrid before. Flipgrid for Fluency, I'm gonna really address that here because I really wanted to get to this where it shows you everything that they can do. One of the key things about when we worked on Fluency with Flipgrid, was kind of how we started across the board, was the difference it made immediately in our students' fluency. If you think about as a teacher, when we do fluency drills traditionally, the student read to you, you did your running record, and you're like, okay, next time you need to do this or this. Well, when we went to this Flipgrid model, and again, anything that records the student's voice, the students had to listen to themselves. The girl in the corner, we did it where actually our students read the same passage every Friday, and they had to go back and listen to themselves and see what they did better and what they needed to still work on. By listening to themselves, they picked up on what they needed to improve. And even down to our lower, I remember a second grade teacher said, my students have made more dramatic improvement and they have picked up on their own errors so fast, which was so impactful. Because they heard the errors, they could assess for themselves, they could move on and try to make those adjustments. It was mind-blowing. So Flipgrid is just a video recording things. You can, again, work through different phonics skills and word analysis skills. You can have a dialogue about comparing and contrasting text. You as the teacher could record a video, you could just put a visual prompt, and each student can go in and just record themselves. I had a young man who hated recording himself. However, he could hold a paper up in front of the camera because I didn't need to see his face. So the Flipgrid library, they have an amazing library. It gives so many ideas. I can't even go into them all, but I love these for different ways you could use it for reading. And it is free. Microsoft purchased them a number of years ago, so it is completely free for educators. So much you can do. If you're working in lower school, I know so many lower school people or elementary love Seesaw for that interaction that students can upload work, they can explain the work, they can annotate it. Such a robust tool that is so friendly for lower school. And if you really need to share stuff with families, they have a great way to have work shared with families in their end. Quickly, some other resources so we get some time, quick time for questions. To think outside the box, I love this book, Ditch That Textbook. Matt Miller, he is amazing on Twitter. His resources are remarkable. I have signed up for his emails because there's so much stuff that comes from him. Again, all of these have the links to these things. So when you click on them, you'll be able to get to them right from here. But he has all these great activities for Google Slides that you can make interactive, that students can design their own Instagram using Google Slides, Create a TikTok experience. Oh boy, we know our students love TikTok. But he constantly sharing great resources and on his website that are make you think outside the box. Because again, our students don't do well with traditional print activities, and they also have a lot of creativity. So how cool that they can use some technology, particularly remotely. If you're virtual, this also helps that, but also that they can use more images and their voice and other things to really demonstrate their knowledge in fun ways. That's the other key thing. I love graphic novels. A little harder to use remotely, I have found. I'm working on that, but if if you don't mind showing up there, then it's really great. They're a little harder for the accessibility component too, but I also found with a year I did it with some class that I had more concern on that. Because graphic novels have simpler language structures and less language, my student who really struggled with bigger print actually did really well with a graphic novel, because we delved into a lot more of the things that a graphic novel demonstrates. We looked at facial expressions. What is the picture trying to tell you? There's a whole lesson in what graphic novels can do. Also, this great article from Kyle Redford, who used to be the Yale Center for Dyslexia and Creativity. Her husband is the one who made the Big Picture movie. If you have seen it, love it. They have a son with dyslexia and a daughter with ADHD. Two amazing people. I love them both. But if you're thinking about, again, different ways to demonstrate knowledge, and I'm not going to get into all these deeply, and you're going to have access to these slides, but think about comics, reading graphic novels, but how could you use comics for kids to demonstrate their reading understanding in any subject area, social studies, science, literature, whatever it may be. There are so many great sites out there that you have access to that you can really do a lot with. I had a teacher who did a great social studies one with Storyboard that a number of years ago that I was so impressed with what the students came up with. And they're engaging and fun, and these kids like to manipulate things like that. If you use Book Creator, really cool comic books that you can create in there. If you happen to use Pages, they have books as well that students can create. And what fun for students to kind of do some sort of a demonstration of understanding. Bunsy is another great tool. It's kind of a, not comics, but it's kind of slides meets comics to me. But really great options that are out there for students to demonstrate knowledge in different ways that capitalize on the fact we know they struggle with print, but we know they can demonstrate their understanding. So that was a lot, and it was fast and furious. But one thing, this is a link to a YouTube channel where I started curating some of the videos that I've talked about. I'll keep adding more. There may be some there that I didn't mention today that you learn about. But it's just a channel where I'm like, if I find a great video that I think is helpful for people to watch, I put it on that channel. Our Southport CoLab has put together actually a variety of things. I have three short 20-minute webinars that I did earlier in the year, writing and note-taking as well as some reading. We actually, if you teach preschool, we had someone great that joined our school who created a whole lot of preschool content over the summer that is available there for free. So definitely check it out. Don't be afraid to reach out to these companies for demonstrations. They want your business. They will probably be more than happy to demonstrate to you. And also connect with others on Facebook and Twitter. I follow a lot of these companies in those spaces, or I find great groups that are going to share those resources. I've been, there's so many great Facebook groups that came out of all of us going remote, but there's definitely ways to find resources. A lot. Hopefully gave enough time. I see some questions popping up in the box.
Yes. So before we officially jump into the questions, let me just let everybody know what is coming up next week, or not next week, but our next webinar. We're going to take a little break, not too much. Okay, so everybody knows that before we officially jump into questions, we let you know what's coming up next on our Saddleback webinar series. And coming up next on September 16th, we will have our very own Jill Haney here to talk about emergent level fiction for newcomers in grades 4 through 12. A lot of our ESL teachers who are joining us today have Saddleback the newcomer kit, Welcome Newcomers, Go Welcome Newcomers. And Jill is going to join us to talk about some new fiction for newcomers written at the emergent level. So you can register for that on our website, and also when you receive the email prompting you to register, you can register there as well. So yes, we definitely have some questions that came up. The first one that came up, and I feel like you may have addressed this already, the text resources, I think this was back when you were talking about the accessibility
Mhm.
options. Were any of them, Kathy asked about whether or not
Yeah, see
they were
the
accessible for
fonts for low vision.
low vision, right?
Um, I I can't speak enough because I don't work with low vision students. However, um, if again, that Seeing AI iOS app is designed for people with vision challenges, so that would be a great resource to start with. Voice Dream Reader is also good because actually he designed Voice Dream Reader for the blind, and then it became this more accessible tool. Um, and Kathy, actually, if you email me, I have a person I know works more specifically with low vision that I know in the assistive tech world. I could send you some of his resources and send you his way. He's amazing. Luis Perez, he's low vision himself, and then is really passionate about working with kids and sharing resources on that. So again, if you email me at splant@southportschool.org, I will get you his way to get those resources. He's also on Twitter if you happen to be there, and if you are on Twitter, connect with me and I will connect you to him.
Sharon, you may actually want to take the screen back and put up that contact information in the Southport CoLab screen slide back up, because some people are asking about that.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry about that, guys. I took the
No.
screen controller away right when people were getting ready to
now they want
jot
it.
down
Now
that
they want
information.
it. There you go.
Yeah. Perfect. So keeping in mind, actually this question came up, it came up in the chat. So, and I know you can see the questions there, but I wanted to get these in there. Somebody wanted to know, Nearpod versus Pear Deck. What are your thoughts? And I kind of like this question of like a head-to-head competition between.
Oh my gosh, it was so fun. I'm laughing because this has been all over my Facebook and all my teacher groups that I'm in. This has been like polls that I've seen. It's really hard for me to say because they do some similarities, but they also do some things differently. I had really been on Nearpod camp because I mainly taught from my iPad and so couldn't use Pear Deck. One thing about Nearpod is they have content that's already created, or some that's free, some that you can purchase. So that's a benefit to what's in their stuff, because if you kind of need some quick, easy to get to resources right away, they have stuff already created. But you can go create your own lessons. And there's levels to their membership. I started with free for a long time, have moved up off and on, depending. Pear Deck is really that you're going to design Google Slides lessons, and then the Pear Deck's going to give in, I mean, great drawing activities, question activities, polling activities. I know people love both. I think there's just differences to really what you're looking to accomplish. And so it's really, it's hard. And I haven't seen a definitive answer from anybody. It's really going to be a matter of what you also are comfortable with. And if you really are looking for other content that's already created, that's when you're going to want to look at Nearpod.
I like this answer. Hillary said, ask what your district will pay for.
That's a great answer too.
Also a great answer. Absolutely.
That is a great answer.
So Christine wanted to know if you had recommendations for specific sites or tools for letters, blends, digraphs, and sounds of pronunciation. And she teaches ESL, adult ESL. And so she was just looking for like a different voice for her students to hear. So any of the tools that you presented, do you think would align with that? Or did you have any other ideas?
That's a really good question. I mean, I guess it's trying to think of if you're providing that instruction and you're just looking for a different voice, there's not a lot of tools that add the sound in when you're manipulating letters. I mean, that Word Wizard did, but again, it's iOS only. And again, if they're older students, may not love that. And again, Lexia would be the other option, but again, there's a cost to that. There's not a lot of tools that unfortunately build in the sound with the manipulation along with it. It'd be delightful if they did. I think the problem is they just know that given instruction that way, it's not so ideal as to have a voice built into the tool. If I come across one, I will send it your way.
Thank you. And Christine, I know there are a lot of YouTube channels, like adult ESL YouTube channels, where, I mean, I realize a video is not the same as having, you know, an app that you can manipulate, but at least you could maybe get that different voice aspect in there as well. So that's a thought.
And it may also be, I saw somebody recently designing, and actually they were getting creative with word walls on like Google Sites and Google Slides, where you could do, maybe you could create a sound wall and have different people record for you, and then have that to share out. It would take a little bit more work on your back end, but could be creative and fun.
That's a really good idea. Yeah, absolutely. Okay, and then we had a question about Pear Deck. Is it possible to register questions on Pear Deck? Do you know the answer to that?
I think if you register questions, I mean, if you're making questions for students to answer, yes, there are among the Pear Deck options of slides that are available. There are ones where you can ask them questions and they have to respond.
Thank you. Okay, and then Gabrielle wanted to know about the additional resources for preschool, which I think is on that slide there.
Yeah, it's on the last slide in here, and I just get to it. There is a link. The Southport CoLab has a YouTube channel. I'm trying to get to my last slide to bring that up. And if you access these slides, again, this tiny URL here is access to this whole slide deck. None of this is proprietary, so you can feel free to share with anybody. But on the second to last slide in the slide deck, I have this link. You can also go look up Southport CoLab on YouTube, but this link will take you right there again if you access these slides directly. Great. Again, there's links to everything in here, so hopefully that will, if you go on and access these and click on them, they will take you to resources or links to where they are.
And then what about hearing impaired apps or websites? Do you know of any off the top of your head?
I am not, we do not work with hearing impaired students, so not as familiar, unfortunately, with that.
Okay.
Oh, and Bernadine, it's funny, Bernadine, great. I'm seeing her question right now, funnily enough. Yes, Apple does have an iOS. If you're trying to get back to where I have it, I wrote it up there. So if you work in the iOS world, there is this Meyerson OG deck, which does have the letters, does have sounds, and you're right, Bernadine, glad you brought that up. I love it because they have this little video of the person saying the sound. It reminds me of the Linda Mood Lips program. Again, it's only iOS, but really it's kind of fun and cute.
I love it. Okay, let me just make sure I got all the questions here. There was a question about copyright and scanning, yeah, but it looks like
it's in the classroom. If you're using it only in a classroom setting, that's where the difference is. Yeah, you can't publish it. I know there was some concern when we all went remote about doing read alouds. Some people talked about contacting authors, but if you're in a classroom setting, there's different rules that apply, as long as you're not publishing it or taking it out. And I would like to tell everybody, I mean, think about there's a lot of tools here, but I think a lot of times you might see that I reference using things like slides. I mean, slides for sound cards, using Keynote. You can, if you get creative and kind of delve into it, and then you can layer in, if you build with slides a lot, where I've seen a lot of teachers do, you know, layer in a Nearpod or a Pear Deck to get the interactive. But there's so many options with what you can create.
So many options. I think people are very excited. And I just want to remind you, if you hop down late, the recording will be on our YouTube channel, so you will be able to watch it again and kind of pick up any details you may have missed. The links, the link to the slides that we provided for you, all of these resources in the slide deck are actually linked, and we provided we compiled all
amazing.
Of the document amazing. For you as well. So, and I tried to put little descriptors of all the products there as well, so you could, it's sort of a quick reference. So there, definitely go back, revisit this information. As I mentioned earlier, if you are an ESL teacher, I'm thinking a lot of the tools around demonstrating knowledge, storyboard that, the comics one, there, just so many of them can be integrated and fit nicely. Same thing with the Fluency tools. And even some of those accessibility tools that you mentioned earlier have built-in translation features that you can use for your students as well. So definitely you're going to want to go back and comb through this and think about any tools that might work for your particular situation, and then investigate further. As Sharon said, you know, reach out to these companies, and YouTube, great resource.
YouTube is amazing.
Great resource for getting details of how to get into some of these tools. So I believe that is all the questions. So we just want to thank everybody for joining us today. you can go ahead and find us on Twitter. You can find us on Facebook, Instagram. We're on all the social medias, people. So go ahead and find us on your favorite one. Let everybody know that you joined us today and that you learned about all of these great resources from Sharon. And we will see you again in September for the webinar with Jill. And we will have more webinars coming up this fall. So never fear, we're always coming up with great PD options for you. So be on the lookout for those. And thank you again for all you do. Best of luck at the beginning of your school year. I know many of you are already in the classroom and some of you are getting ready to start. So good luck and thank you again, and we'll see you next time. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks. Bye, guys.
Bye.